Story 1. Measuring contests. Implying someone is less of a man because they made a different decision than you did or have a different preference than you do. Some people are obnoxious, I get that. But there is just a lot of unnecessary hate. Story 2. Thinking it is cool to fight and be aggressive with other men. In my early 20s, I often got into fights and confronted other men if I felt they had wronged me somehow. I thought it made me look cool and tough. As a 34-year-old man, I now realize that attitude and the fighting came from a place of insecurity. I was not secure enough in myself as a man, so I felt I had to try to look tough, which in turn would make me look manly. It was foolish and got me into situations I should not have been in. As you get older, you learn to brush things off and not join others when they are doing unwise things. If you join them, now there are two unwise people. Story 3. Trying to lead in every situation is not always necessary. Sometimes you need a leader and sometimes you need to follow. If you are too insecure to know when it is best to be silent and do what you are told, that does not make you look strong. Story 4. Not knowing how to parent their own children. Some men say, I don't know how to change a diaper, or I have no idea how to do my daughter's hair, as if it is something to be proud of. Either you are incompetent, lazy, or uncaring. Story 5 might be an unpopular opinion, but guys who love to talk about how they got in a fistfight with someone back in high school or those who brag about their body count. Story 6. When they buy a macho car like a used Subaru WRX and boast about how fast it is and how good it sounds, yet they do not even know how to change a tire or perform any maintenance on it. Story 7. Pretty much all masculine flexing fits this description in my opinion. Real self-confidence means never having to brag. Story 8. As a man, there are only two things that ever seem truly manly to me instead of insecure posturing. Men who do not feel the need to seek approval from other men, and a man chopping down a tree with an axe. Story 9. How much money you make means nothing to me. I am an accountant and see people make so many mistakes thinking they know everything. Just because you make more than someone does not mean you are smarter, manlier, or more successful than them. Honestly, it shows you are insecure about your finances. To be honest, I would rather be happy with less money than wealthy and miserable. Story 10. Any shirt that tells the world how tough or loyal a person is. Most veteran t-shirts, and I am a veteran who had a short phase wearing them, generally say something about sheepdogs or Spartans. The person wearing it is usually the type who runs out of breath just standing up. Pretty impressive for sure. Story 11. Two of the three younger men at work like to brag about how they will beat anyone over anything. They try to sound tough in front of the secretary, but they are built like beanstalks and throw some of the slowest punches I have ever seen. They attempt to shadow box while bragging to the women here, and it just comes off as childish. Story 12. A better question is what does not do this? The need to flex at all always makes me think they are insecure. Story 13. Flaunting how much money they make and how much they paid for the previous girlfriend, such as holidays and rent, is very tacky and immediately unattractive. Story 14. A coworker once bragged to me that he never apologized to his wife for anything. Even if he knew he was wrong, he would always word his apologies in a gaslighting way, like, I am sorry you felt that way about what I said. Their marriage lasted less than a year. Story 15. Walking in a straight line purposefully, bumping into others or not making room for them to pass. Peak insecurity. Story 16. Lifted and wide stance trucks, especially on large wheels, suggest the owner prioritizes appearance over utility because they do not use their truck for actual work. Story 17. Cars, wealth, women as objects or objectives. When I encounter this, I usually feel pity for them for still thinking like a teenager. Story 18. I see a lot of social media posts from Andrew Tate popping up on Reddit. That guy is the complete opposite of masculine. He has absolutely no clue what it means to be a man. The whole alpha male concept is similar. It is like a group of weak individuals, to use the language of my generation, got together and made up a strange leveling system like in Dungeons and Dragons and then claimed to be at the top of it. However, almost everything they say and do makes them appear more like wimps and crybabies. Story 19. I know a man who brags about how popular and how much of a bully he was in high school. He talks about crazy fights he has been in and how people were scared of him. Besides being almost 30 and it being immature, he is not truthful. I was in his graduating class and it is the farthest thing from the truth. I am not saying he is weak, but he is convinced all these people are scared of him and he looks foolish. Story 20. Fluffing up, particularly with expensive clothes, shoes, perfumes, watches, and cars, just makes a man look like a high-maintenance diva. Story 21. Speaking very disrespectfully about women does not make you look like a macho super stud. It makes you look like a scared little boy. Story 22. Fashion labels. No man has ever become more masculine by showing off the brand of his suit or the label on his shoes. Story 23. Peacocking in any fashion, whether it is bragging about physical prowess, money, skills, womanizing, friends, or drug abuse, always has the opposite of the intended effect. Story 24. Intentionally being rude to service workers or people who work beneath them at their job is an abuse of power and is unacceptable. Story 25. Not just men, but interpreting something in the most literal way possible. They think they are suggesting the other person is stupid, but it just comes across as them having poor comprehension skills. Story 26. I find that anyone who is overly concerned with being masculine seems like they are trying too hard. Being quietly confident in yourself, emotionally balanced, loving, caring, sensitive to others, and unapologetically yourself, even when you are not typical, are all signs of a strong masculine person. Being aggressive and overly concerned about being disrespected or worried that others think you are too feminine are very weak responses. A strong person is just themselves, emotionally balanced, and confident enough to know that those concerns do not matter. Being a good person in this world and a good person to others is what truly matters. Story 27. Broadcasting almost everything associated with showing off. If he needs you to know, he is insecure and has his identity wrapped up in superficial things. He does not even know himself well enough to be secure in himself. Story 28. The alpha male handshake. You know, the one crushing grip, flexing biceps, staring right into your eyes to assert dominance. Story 29. Pickup trucks with a raised chassis and giant tires. If it is covered in mud, I understand. If it is pristine and just taking up 2 spots in a supermarket parking lot, then not so much. Story 30. Working more than 40 hours a week, including weekends, because they are focused on hard work. When they are older, they will regret not taking breaks and enjoying life. Story 31. Engaging in sexual activity with an adult when you are a minor is illegal and serious. It is important to understand that such actions can lead to long prison sentences. Individuals involved may have been groomed and subjected to abuse. No responsible adult should engage in sexual activity with a minor. Additionally, boasting about having sex with underage individuals is harmful and may result in legal consequences. It is important to report such behavior to the appropriate authorities. Story 32. How a person drives is a good indicator of their character. Are they constantly tailgating others? Do they get road rage easily? Do they think they are above following traffic laws? Do they rev their engines or make excessive noise while thinking it is funny or cool? Those are not mature individuals. They are insecure people trying to impress an imaginary audience. It is neither cute nor attractive, and we all recognize the expression when someone behaves that way within hearing or sight. Story 33. Their confidence. If someone had confidence, they would not need to say that they do. In fact, if a man joked about having low confidence, I would think he is self-aware. Story 34. How many women they have slept with is such a teenager or 20-year-old thing to brag about. If anything, it just shows you have not really grown up at all if you are 30 and still shouting about how high your body count is. Story 35. A man should be able to fix anything and solve any problem. This mindset leads to refusing to admit when we are wrong and seeing everything you tell us as a problem requiring a solution. Story 36. How many girls they have had relations with. How big their penis is. How muscular they are. One-upping my father-in-law. Their bank account or income. Bragging about their car. Having a sports car or a truck does not make you more of a man than any other man. Story 37. Any man who talks about being tough, a golden glove boxer, or having a black belt folds the second they are pressured or their toughness is tested. Maybe I am old, but the silent type has always been more feared than the class clown. Story 38. Money, cars, women. Bragging. Vanity. Toys. If all you are is money, who are you without it? Does anyone actually like you? Ironically, thinking hustle culture and grinding is healthy is misguided. The same goes for being shredded and using steroids. It just tells me that the person is obsessed with appearance and likely thinks much less about other people. Usually deeply insecure and projecting. Story 39. A needlessly large and loud truck and an obsession over military-grade firearms and live-action role-playing. I am a car enthusiast and a firearms enthusiast to some extent. But everyone knows exactly who I am talking about when I say these individuals display clear insecurity and weakness. Story 40. Talking about the number of sexual partners or how often they are having sex in general is acceptable occasionally. However, making it the main topic of every conversation seems inappropriate. It makes me think that something might be wrong. Story 41. Framing life in terms of being an alpha or not, and before that was the machismo culture, and much of the men's community just sounds insecure and like someone with a facade. Story 42. Anything and everything. Flexing is just a stupid, cringe term for bragging, and people who brag are egotistical and full of themselves. Story 43. Guns. They are a tool. They are occasionally necessary. They do not make you a man, and they do not make you cool. Implied threats of murder are wrong. People treat them like talismans of masculinity, as if their presence validates physical and emotional shortcomings. That said, guns are cool. Flexing them is weak unless they are rare. However, displaying rare guns is different from showing off as a man. Story 44. When men brag about how many women they have slept with, they think it makes them look cool. However, it usually just makes them look silly and as if they are trying too hard. Story 45. The list is endless. It is so prevalent everywhere. It is basically a human response. I am in the construction industry, which is full of compensation for childhood and adolescent insecurities. I actually feel bad for the person when I see them overcompensating because I know deep inside there is a desperate human just trying to be accepted. Story 46. Another example is having children that many men cannot afford, simply to continue their legacy. This mindset makes them believe they are wealthy aristocrats or nobility needing to leave their mark in the world. This macho attitude of impregnate a woman to carry on my name has the opposite effect, chaining these men to a life and job they absolutely hate, rather than allowing them to be free agents like Mustang stallions. The outcome is the opposite of what they intend. Story 47. Leaning a bit too far into the fact that their car or truck is nice. My friend, it's a car. You get in and drive it places like everyone else. A nicer car than others does not automatically mean you are way cooler or tougher. Story 48. Bragging about promiscuity typically indicates a multitude of deeper issues and insecurities in my opinion. Story 49. Alpha stuff. Punisher stickers and shirts. Proud Boys bravado, same for 3%ers. Lifted trucks with all the lights, stickers, and off-road equipment, especially if they never get dirty. Trying to fight people. Story 50. Being intoxicated, you act and sound like a child. The more intoxicated you are, the more immature you appear. Story 51. I would say any kind of compensating behavior, such as driving fancy macho cars, dressing like a gym enthusiast in inappropriate social contexts, or making comments like, "Have I mentioned I am heterosexual today?" comes across as pathetic and pretentious. I see other men doing these things to try to signal how manly they are, but it just seems insincere and off-putting to me. Story 52. Adding hot sauce to food to appear strong and durable often simply ruins the meal. People have varying levels of spiciness they enjoy, but you can tell by their faces when they are just doing it to show off and not enjoying the food they are eating. Story 53. Showing off how many girls they have been with as if it were a Pokemon card collection. If your biggest achievement is being a walking red flag, maybe sit this one out. Story 54. Not crying, not showing emotion, or not being vulnerable. Men who hide these things think it makes them appear more masculine. But for me, it is the opposite. The courage to show these things to a woman is a major turn-on of your manliness. Story 55. Caring about professional athletes. None of these men on the football field even know you exist. Why give them so much attention and power? Story 56. Overweight men who want to convince the world that they are strong and intimidating. However, everyone is just thinking, no, you are simply an overweight man with an unkempt beard. Story 57. The more meaningless things they try to brag about, the worse the effect. Size of fists, size of buttocks, length of arms, and so on. Story 58. Inability to express or process emotions. Inability to be vulnerable. Aggressive driving. Becoming aggressive with other men out of jealousy. Being very muscular and going to the gym. The list is endless. Story 59. Ragging your car and driving recklessly. I have a colleague who has a nice car, but he always parks where there is the highest foot traffic in and out of the office, clearly to show off. He is always the first to leave at the end of the day, revving his engine loudly so everyone can hear and see him, as if he is overcompensating. Story 60. I was at a mountain temple yesterday, an hour outside of Chiang Mai. A busload of muscle-bound men were doing pull-ups on the back frame of a Jeep that had brought them up from the visitor parking lot. Thankfully, they were speaking Spanish. Story 61. Their ability to suffer in silence, being unable to communicate effectively or even try to express themselves, is not masculine. It is not feminine either. It is downright infantile. Story 62. The opposite of appearing masculine is appearing feminine. The only thing I can think of is when a man goes into a rage over something minor and looks like he has premenstrual syndrome. Story 63. How sparsely they can live. Hey guys, look at me. I rented this 3-bedroom loft in downtown and only furnished it with a 1960s console television and a pizza box to sit on. I'm such a man. Story 64. Wearing a pair of Oakley sunglasses on top of their hat or hanging them backwards on the back of their head. Story 65. Men who sit with their legs wide apart in public transport to appear confident. They think they have to prove something to others. Story 66. Anything extra is unnecessary and always has been. Road trucks and manicured balls and beards are not for men. Story 67. Bragging about doing traditionally non-masculine things like baking or playing dress-up with their daughter or many other examples. You are supposed to be a well-rounded person. You are supposed to be a good father. These are not things to do and then point at and say, look at that. Look how different I am. Doesn't that make me such a man for doing these things? Please tell me I am special. Story 68. Cars, vanity, muscles, amount of sex they have had, homophobic and misogynistic viewpoints, how tough they are. It is a long list. Most men are clowns. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.